If there's one component I've discovered in my years of merchandising at conventions, it's which you comply with the crowd. The oldsters who've been there earlier then have already made all the errors for you. As lengthy as you're clever, sufficient to research from folks who got here earlier, then you should make the one's errors over again. If you spot the opposite carriers bringing in fans, you'd hire Cross, get a touch table fan to your desk, or you're going to be struggling in insufficient AC. If everyone's heading off a particular meals truck, it doesn't be counted how famous it's far with the attendees. You live away if you're clever. More than something else, it's vital to simply go along with all of us else all through setup and teardown. You may suppose you've noticed a shortcut. However, the tables who've been merchandising this conference for years nearly definitely recognize something you don't recognize. Maybe that handy elevator movement's at a snail's pace. Maybe the ones close by stairs are dangerously low friction. Maybe that door to the automobile parking space has an alarm that is going off in case you prop it open for too long. Whatever the reason, if no one's the use of a less complicated route is due to the fact that route isn't truly less complicated. You can accept as true with people who already recognize, or you could turn out to be one extra who needed to research the difficult way. There are continually some who've to look for themselves. At this conference, that changed into Partha. He had comedian books for sale, lengthy containers densely filled with cautiously sleeved issues. He changed into putting in on the desk, subsequent to mine, and laughed whilst he noticed me wheeling my containers all of the manner from the doorways on the front of the conference hall. Man, you went the lengthy manner around, huh? It's wherein every person changed into going, I said, waving on the circulation of carriers at the back of me. Seemed the great manner now no longer to wander off or caught somewhere. Nope. See that door 20 feet at the back of us? Opens to a hallway that is going immediately to the parking lot. Can't be 100 feet from right here to the door of my car. How a long way did you need to walk? Like 1/4 mile. I seemed returned throughout the conference hall. It changed into at the least 100 FT simply from the doorways. And earlier than that, I'd needed to wind through multiple corridors and past the lobby, and that changed into all after the parking lot. Probably now, no longer 1/4 mile, however perhaps a tenth. Certainly an awful lot extra. Then the 100 FT Partha changed into boasting about. Must be a purpose nobody else goes through there, I stated. Maintenance hallway, maybe? Could be we're alleged to maintain it clear. They haven't marked it if so, he stated. Nothing on or in it, however, that silly sign. A piece of paper were taped to the door with the handwritten words, Hallway of Shadows. It changed into caught down with extensive strips of obvious packing tape, absolutely masking the paper and fastening it securely to the metallic of the door. Whoever had positioned it there had desired to make certain it didn't come free. Sounds like a sideshow exhibit, I stated. Partha shrugged. Nothing in there. However, an empty lower back corridor. Nothing stored, not anything staged. It simply looks as if a rusty emergency door from the automobile parking space side. I figured it'd be locked, so I changed into stoked while it opened and became out to be the maximum handy manner in. I bet nobody else concept to attempt the door. I bet, I stated. It did appear a whole lot extra handy. However, I knew that later I'd discover Partha locked out, or locked in, or searching out the quantity of the lot that had towed his car, or something. If there has been a simpler manner that wasn't being used, then it wasn't truly simpler. I knew that changed into true, even supposing I didn't understand why on this case. All day long, that door stayed shut. I noticed some oldsters stroll towards it, simplest to be shooed away, via way of means of the carriers nearby. I couldn't make out the conversations. So in the end, once I had a gradual moment, I walked over to invite for myself. What's with the hallway of shadows? We allowed to apply that, or what? Nah, we're given an alarm on it, stated the person on the booth. His name tag diagnosed him as Norman. His worn-out mindset showed what I'd seen. He'd been telling humans this all day. I gestured lower back towards my booth. Partha says it changed into excellent this morning. The alternate in Norman's mindset changed into abrupt and intense. He went through it. What time? Load in, so like 7, I guessed. Way too late, he muttered. Might have been cloudy sufficient still. Maybe. He appeared down the road to wherein Partha sat, thankfully arguing with an attendee, approximately the situation of one of the comics. He shook his head. Guess we'll see, he stated, once more on the hole beneath his breath. See what? My query startled him, as though he changed into amazed. I changed into nevertheless there. Nothing. We'll see if, there has been a silent alarm, if the Hearth Place Marshal comes. If he doesn't, then I think he were given away with it. Suppose so, I said. I wasn't certain what changed into happening here. However, it changed into quite clean that I wasn't going to get any in addition answers. I commenced to stroll away. Hey, Norman referred to as after me. Don't undergo that hallway, though, in case they grew to become the alarm lower back on. I gave him a thumbs up. I may want to see a person coming near my desk and searching round for the cellar. I moved quickly lower back to trap them earlier than they wandered past. The greater video games I bought this weekend, the much less I needed to percent lower back up on the quit. Money changed into pleasant with inside the abstract. However, attending to do much less guide, hard work, changed into usually my greater, instantaneously motivating aspect in the course of those conventions. The strangest aspect changed into that on the quit of the day. After they locked the cellar corridor, and we had been all going domestic via the night, I noticed lots of human beings going out via the hallway of shadows. It changed into an abnormal pattern, though. They best ever entered the door, one at a time. Each individual closed it in the back of them, even supposing they had been with different human beings. The subsequent individual could open it immediately, so it wasn't like they had been anticipating the primary one to make it down the corridor. It changed into an inversion of the usual societal custom of keeping the door for the individual earlier than you. When coming into the hallway of shadows, everybody made certain to close the door firmly, with inside the face of whoever is probably in the back of. Except Partha, of course. He gestured me in the direction of the door as we had been leaving. Look, allow me display you ways lot shorter, this manner is. He opened the door and held it for me. Shoot, it's pitch black in there. Is there a mild switch? There isn't, referred to as a barely panicked voice from inside. Look, in case you're coming through, then come on. It's only an instantly shot to the A long way side. It's like 20 feet. You don't want lights. The left wall's clean in case you want to maintain your hand on something. Come on, don't loaf around with inside the doorway. The entire speech changed into brought in a rush. We couldn't see the speaker. Partha and I shrugged and stepped inside. The door swung close at the back of us. The hallway wasn't pretty as darkish because it had seamed. The left wall changed into covered with home windows close to the ceiling. And even though they allow in simplest, a little, dim mild from the nighttime sky, it changed into sufficient to peer by. There changed into a determine on the a long way end. "Come on, this manner," she stated. I walked in the direction of the speaker, trailing my hand alongside the wall as he had suggested. As we drew close, he opened the a long way door. It led at once to the lot wherein I had parked this morning, simply as Partha had stated. We all stepped out onto the sidewalk, and the girl closed the door at the back of us. "So what's with every person else?" stated Partha. "What do you mean?" she stated. "In the hallway. They're simply chilling out there?" The girl had an expression on her face that, on the time, I examined as confusion. There wasn't anybody else in there. Partha gave a half of laugh, as though he concept she changed into telling a joke. Yes, they're changed into. It needed to be like half of the cellar corridor covered up in there towards the a long way wall. I mean, it changed into tough to peer in there. However, there had been truly a gaggle of people. He appeared to me for confirmation. However, I ought to simplest shrug. I didn't word anybody. Maybe you were given higher nighttime, imaginative, and prescient than I do. They had been truly there. He reopened the door to the equal, impenetrable darkness. "Hello?" He flipped on his telecell smartphone flashlight and shone it into the hallway. It changed into slender and empty. There changed into not anything to cover at the back of. There changed into no person there. "I swear," commenced Partha. He stopped, then all at once grew to become round, as though he concept that they'd gotten at the back of him somehow. There changed into no person there. However, the cellar we had met with inside the hallway of shadows, who flinched far from his mild, as though it had been dangerous. "Close the door," she stated, "and don't ever convey a mild in there. But first, did you know that 98% of people who watch my videos aren't subscribed? That means you. And yes, I am speaking specifically to you. Probably aren't. So now would be a great time to leave a like on the video and subscribe. Anyhow, she moved quickly off earlier than we ought to ask any questions. Partha and I stared at every different for a moment. "Definitely a few type of a prank," he stated. His automobile became nearer than mine. However, he became nonetheless sitting in it once I left the parking lot. He became looking at the door, as though he nonetheless predicted all the ones, human beings he had visible, to return back pouring out. I noticed him startle whilst my headlights panned over him. He gave me a sheepish wave as I drove away. The subsequent morning, I parked inside the identical lot. I eyeballed the door, which became now no longer marked in any respect from this aspect. I concept approximately taking the shortcut inside. I advised myself it became probable locked, that the alarm became probable, grew to become again on. I walked the lengthy manner around. Partha became at his desk by the point I arrived. Getting your morning hike in, I see. Could have simply come via the hallway like I did. "No one ready in there for you this morning?" I joked. He laughed, however it sounded a touch strained. "I'll be honest, that weirded me out. I dreamed approximately it final night. I became right here, inside the conference center. However, irrespective of which door I opened to get out, it caused that hallway. It became usually pitch black, however by no means empty. I ought to usually inform the darkness became full, even though I didn't understand of what. And each door caused that hallway, not only a comparable one, the identical one, like it became there beforehand of me. The laughter vanished from his voice as he defined the dream, changed through desperation and fear. I ought to wear staring, due to the fact. Whilst he met my eyes, he pressured a grin again onto his face. Anyway, how'd income move for you yesterday? Shelves are nonetheless searching quite full. However, we ought to be getting the primary crowds today, yeah? Hey, in case you want to speak approximately, I began. Partha reduced me off. Nah, I'm sorry I delivered it up. I simply met you yesterday. I didn't suggest to show you into my conference therapist. Come on, allows communicate shop. Did you making again your desk charge yet? I allow him steer the communication away to more secure territory. However, I questioned what precisely he concept he'd visible in that hallway. It became clean. It had rattled him, if it became nonetheless weighing on his thoughts, beneath the tough white glare of the conference corridor lighting. I'd been spooked through shadows lots of times. However, it usually appeared stupid the subsequent day. He didn't appear to be experiencing the identical relief. As the day went on, Partha were given jumpier and jumpier. I often stuck him unexpectedly, snapping his head to at least one aspect or the opposite, as though he had noticed a surprising motion in his peripheral vision. He spent quite a few time searching beneath the material protecting his desk and across the nook of the material divider at the back of him. And again, I determined him looking at the closed door of the hallway of shadows. Something over there? I requested him at one point. He gave me the identical sheepish grin I'd visible the preceding night. Nah, just concept I noticed something is all. Around noon, he pulled the drape over his comics and requested me to preserve an eye fixed on his desk for a few minutes whilst he ducked out to get a sandwich. I agreed, however, didn't actually pay an excessive amount of interest to it. I had my personal go with the drift of clients to wait to. Anyone who desired to thieve something should flow the drape apart first, and I figured I changed into certain to word something that large. A little while later, I nearly jumped out of my pores and skin, whilst Partha hissed at me from the nook of my booth. He changed into crouched down, hidden in the back of a cord rack full of games. I should best see his huge eyes and the pinnacle of his head. "Who's in my chair?" he whispered. I became to look. The seat changed into empty. No one's touched your stuff the complete time you had been long past," I stated. His eyes darted beyond me, staring via the cord rack at his seat. "There's nobody there?" I seemed again, as though in some way I would possibly have neglected someone occupying the chair. There changed into nobody. I shook my head. Partha slowly rose from in the back of the rack, his gaze constant at the chair the whole time. His eyes widened even similarly as he cleared the low rack and received an unobstructed view of the empty chair. "Someone changed into there," he stated. I noticed them via the rack, after which they had been simply long past. "Where might they have got long past?" I requested. "Away," he stated. His eyes flicked wildly from aspect to aspect. "I hope." He commenced to crouch down, as though to look via the rack again, then vacillated, wobbling to and fro on his toes. "Hey, I stated. "Can you cross lower back on your desk? I want to preserve the gap open for the folks that are shopping for stuff." "Yeah," stated Partha. Sorry, Sorry." He skulked beyond, peering below his chair earlier than flopping down into it. He drummed his arms at the desk earlier than him. He seemed beneath it. He did now no longer discover the comics. He regarded reluctant to touch the drape. I became my lower back barely to him and attempted to awareness on my clients, as opposed to his unsettling movements. The subsequent time I seemed over, he changed into long past. I hadn't heard him leave. His chair hadn't been driven lower back from the desk. I glanced beneath. However, there has been not anything there. However, some cardboard containers tucked out of the way. The sandwich he had long passed to get, nonetheless, sat there with best bites out of it. I informed myself that he need to have long passed to get a drink, or to the bathroom, or something else normal. However, the mind slipped via way of means of turning slowly into hours, and Partha in no way returned. His desk of comics remained shrouded throughout the Saturday rush. A few humans requested if I knew while he'd be returned. I may want to simplest shrug. Eventually, the waft of buyers slowed to a trickle, after which even the one's previous few had been herded out as they closed the cellar corridor for the night. I closed up my booth, searching over at Partha's deserted desk as I did so. The sandwich turned into nonetheless there. Partha had in no way returned. I have to have taken the lengthy manor round at the manor out. I have to, in no way, have long past returned through that hallway. But I informed myself I turned into being absurd, that I turned into leaping at shadows like Partha had been. I armed myself with my rationality and took the shortcut, returned to my automobile. As the door to the hallway of shadows closed in the back of me, I heard a quiet noise, slightly louder than the whisper of air from the final door. I idea it would had been my name. "Partha?" I requested, and I did something unfathomably stupid. I took out my phone. I became at the flashlight. For a moment, an instant, the mild simply illuminated the dark. The room turned into nonetheless pitch black. However, now I turned into searching at it. Then the darkness scattered like cockroaches, now no longer disappearing because it have to have in mild, however scuttling away in 10,000 shivering pieces. It fled, however simplest, as some distance as my mild reached. I may want to sense it, accrued on the edges. The hallway turned into empty, not anything however simple, white partitions and a cement floor. My personal shadow stretched out throughout it, accomplishing for the go out to the parking lot. I walked forward, looking that shadow climb the wall and waft over the door, and simplest then did it arise to me. I turned into conserving the mild in the front of myself. So what then turned into casting the shadow? I bolted. I leapt throughout the one's previous few toes to the door, cringing because the shadow silently roared up in the front of me. However, while my shoulder slammed into the steel door, it flew open, dumping me onto the sidewalk via way of means of the parking lot. The shadows outdoor had been simple as shadows. The hallway in the back of me turned into only a hallway. I slammed the door close and repeated this to myself. There turned into not anything wrong. It turned into all a trick of the mild. I saved the indoors lighting on in my automobile as I drove to my hotel. However, nonetheless, I felt there has been something with inside the back seat. I became on each mild with inside the room once I arrived. However, the corners, closets, and areas I couldn't see into taunted me. And once I, in the end, fell asleep, I dreamed of the hallway of shadows. It turned into now no longer anywhere, because it had been in Partha's dream. now no longer at first. Only a number of the doorways I opened caused the hallway. I nonetheless had locations I may want to go, locations I may want to run. But the extra doorways I went through, the extra of them opened onto that hallway. Till at remaining, I discovered myself inside the conference hall, surrounded via way of means of dozens of doorways on each side. And in the back of each unmarried one turned into the hallway. I stood there inside the middle of the room, paralyzed via way of means of fear, after which each door started out to slowly swing open at once. The darkness poured forth, thick and viscous as syrup, and dragged me away into everlasting night. I awakened screaming. The lighting fixtures had been all nonetheless on. I turned into alive, untouched, for now. I concept approximately entering into my automobile and using away. I concept approximately leaving my sales space, subsequent to Partha's shrouded collection, and allowing them to inform anything tales they might. If I concept, I may want to get away the hallway. I might have tried. But already I see the motion inside the shadows round me. The matters darting nearer on every occasion I appearance away. Already I can sense them ultimate in. One manner or another, I will come to be inside the dark, in the hallway, forever. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more amazing video. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. All right, that's it for today. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.